Good afternoon. Today I will be presenting information in fulfillment of the requirements for the My Peeps assignment. Nearly all of my relatives are native English speakers, and all of them are white. If they are not native English speakers, I will simply make a special note once I get to their biography. However, if I say nothing, we may assume that they are white and native English speakers. I will begin with my mother's side of the family, with Shannon Janine Drury. She was born in Cleburne, Texas in 1952 and educated at Brownwood High School in Brownwood, Texas. She completed a Bachelor's of Music education in Denton, Texas at North Texas State University, which is now known as the University of North Texas. She transplanted to Georgia in 1976 and began working for ITT as an administrative assistant. She was later promoted to operations assistant and then promoted to customer service and sales representative. She worked there for a total of about 10 years before the company fell apart. She began doing independent consulting for phone systems with ITT's old customers following the collapse of the company. At age 35, she got married and had 2 children, myself and my sister. I am the oldest child. She continues to work as a stay-at-home mom and manage the household. Next, I will cover her mother's life, my grandmother. Billy Mormon was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1927 and educated in Fort Worth Public Schools, graduating from Pascal High School. She did not attend college. She began working at the Standard Oil Company in the legal department. She worked for this company for many years, and while she was there, she met her husband, Jack Drury. He signed up for a tour of duty in World War II. After the war, they were married in 1945. They were only married 18 months, and they divorced. Billy moved to Cleburne, Texas, where she got a job hosting a radio show in which she sang and entertained the public. There she met Sam Gatewood, my biological grandfather, in 1948. She and Sam had 2 children, Shannon and Robert Drury. That is my mother and my mother's brother. After having my mother, she moved back to Fort Worth and filed for divorce against Sam. Shortly afterwards, she remarried Jack Drury and had 3 more children with him. After they remarried, they moved to Lubbock, Texas. Their children's names were Shauna, Ted, and Dina. My grandfather got a job with the post office, and the family moved to Brownwood for the job. There, my grandmother began working for the Texas Highway Department in Brownwood. Following this, she got a job as a secretary to the president of the bank, and then she became a bank officer in the loan department. The family later moved to Abilene, Texas for my grandfather's job, and there my grandmother did not work. The family again relocated to San Saba, Texas, and my grandmother worked for the county. They continued living there until retirement when they moved back to Brownwood. My grandparents are both deceased. My grandmother came from a family of 4 siblings. Their names were Billy, Early, Burton, and Clora. Next, I will cover my grandfather. While Sam Gatewood is my biological grandfather, he was estranged from the family with no contact during the formative years of my mother's life, and I have only met him once. He is now deceased. In the spirit of this class, which is about cultural influence, I chose to review Jack Drury's life since he is the man I considered my grandfather throughout my life. He was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1924 and was only ever married to my grandmother, Billy Mormon. During World War II, he was a paratrooper. He worked for the U.S. Postal Service for many years and eventually became postmaster in Brownwood, Texas. Due to his job, the family moved around frequently. His life was concurrent with my grandmother's life. He attended Wesleyan College in Fort Worth. However, he dropped out halfway through to join the military. He tried to go back after his military service was completed, but he never finished college. Next, I will discuss the lives of my grandmother's parents, or my great-grandparents. Sudie Mae Burton. Very little is known about these people, however, we do have some basic information. She had 9 brothers and sisters, and she was born in Alabama. Her immigration path from Alabama to Texas is unknown, although she was married in Alabama. She died in 1953 at age 65, and she would have been born in 1888. Her husband, Claude Mormon, died from a heart attack in 1956 at age 63. Within the family, he had a reputation for dishonesty and abandoned Sudie Mae and the family very early in the marriage. This left my grandmother without a father at the age of 3 years old. They were already living in Texas at this time, and she only saw him once after that. After he left the family, he moved to California. It is thought that he was from Alabama as well, and that they moved to Texas sometime during the 1920s. My grandmother stayed in contact with her father's side of the family after his disappearance. His family migrated to parts of Texas and Oklahoma for job opportunities, and he had 6 brothers and sisters. Next, I will cover Sudie Mae Burton's parents' lives. I know very little about them. I do know that they were descendants from Germany and that they were Dutch, although they came over on a boat from England early in their lives. William Burton was a Commodore in the Navy of his home country. Now to cover Claude Mormon's parents. I know very little about Mary Bowman's life, but Charles Mormon worked as a wildcatter, or a person who would go out and scout oil deposits and put derricks on them. He was extremely wealthy from this line of work. He died in 1941. His cultural heritage was German and Dutch. It is not known what languages he spoke aside from English. While I have the names of my grandfather's parents, Cecile Pearl and Theodore Drury, I know nothing about their lives, so I will not be including that in this presentation. Now I will cover my father's side of the family. Ronald Eugene Clements was born in Akron, Ohio in 1955. The family frequently transplanted due to my grandfather's management job. They lived in the following places in order: Akron, Ohio, Guatemala, back to Akron, Clarksdale, Mississippi, Boston, and Atlanta or Dunwoody. He completed his education at Peachtree High School in Dunwoody and continued on to the University of Georgia, where he obtained a Bachelor's of Arts in Photojournalism. This program is now defunct at UGA. He was also a varsity college athlete and competed on the UGA men's gymnastics team, which is also now non-existent. After leaving school, he took over the family business, Best Canvas Products and Services. He continues to run that business to this day. He was married to my mother at age 33, and they had my sister and I. They are still married after 27 years. He is a native English speaker, and he is Caucasian. However, for a period in his life, he was fluent in Spanish, because when he lived in Guatemala, all of their classes in school were taught in Spanish. He has 1 sister and 1 brother. His mother, Jacqueline Darby, was born in Akron, Ohio in 1929. She graduated from Greensburg High School. She knew my grandfather in high school, and he was a senior. He played basketball and football and baseball, and she was a freshman cheerleader. They first met when my grandmother became a senior in high school. Their entire relationship and courtship happened while my grandfather was in military service. My grandfather's education level includes completion of high school, and she took some college correspondence classes and studied alongside my grandfather while he was going to school. She became a secretary for rubber companies like Firestone and Goodyear. She also worked as a craft teacher and craft shop owner in New England, in Massachusetts, and Atlanta. Later on, she served as the secretary of treasurer of the family business Best Canvas Products and Services. She had 3 siblings total, 1 who died in infancy. Her husband, William Clements, was born in Akron, Ohio in 1926 and educated in Greensburg, Ohio, at Greensburg Schools. He received a Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Management from Ohio State and Akron University and an MBA from Western Reserve. Halfway through the Bachelor's of Science at Ohio State, he signed up for the military. He was in service for 4 years, from ages 17 to 21. He served as a sergeant in the military police, which involved directing traffic and driving military personnel and transporting prisoners. He served at bases in Denver, New Mexico, Mississippi, and Kwajalein, which is an island in the Pacific Ocean. His unit were called the Guinea Pigs because on the island of Kwajalein they tested atomic bombs. His unit was moving their way toward Tokyo when the atomic bomb was dropped, which ended the war. Later, he worked as a factory manager at various companies in New England and as a private business owner. He later passed on the family business to his son, Ron Clements. He worked as a factory manager in Guatemala and Mississippi and then Boston, and then migrated to Georgia for a sales job. After 4 years of this, he began the family business. He had 4 siblings total. Many of my grandparents' relatives, their information is lost in history. But I'll start with Trella Nadine Hall. She was born in Shelburne, Indiana in 1898 and completed high school. She came from a family of 11 siblings. She was a seamstress and worked for a tailor. She died in 1983 at age 85. Her husband was born in Cardinia, Indiana in 1896 and completed high school. He came from a family of 5 siblings. He died in 1969. He owned a salvage yard and then worked for Libby Glass in Toledo, Ohio. He migrated northward for the job. His mother, Josephine Turner, was born in Indiana. Her occupation was as a housewife and raising 11 children. And her husband, Commodore Hall, was born in Curryville, Indiana in 1861, died in 1925. His education was unknown, and he was a supervisor at a coal mining company. The mine was called the West End Mine. Morgan Joseph Darby's father was Sam Darby. The only thing that is known about him is that he was born in England in an unknown location. He came to the U.S. when he was 9 years old. His occupation was unknown and his death date was unknown. His wife was not from England. He was Caucasian and an English speaker. My grandfather's mother, Martha Lillian Pertz, was born in Poland, or perhaps what was part of Germany at the time. It was 1901, and came to the United States as a child. She did not work, she had no occupation, and she had 4 children. She died in 1973 from severe rheumatoid arthritis. She had 1 brother and 1 sister. Her education is unknown, but she spoke German and English and was of German descent. Her husband, Samson Drury Clements, was born in 1899 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He completed high school and no college, moved from Tuscaloosa to Akron to work as a supervisor in a Firestone rubber company. He retired after 40 years with that company. He also served in World War I in France as a sergeant in the artillery division. He had 1 brother. Martha Pertz's parents were Julie Ann and Walter Pertz. Nothing is known about their life except they were native Germans. Samson Clements' parents were Jesse Hammer and John Preston Clements. Jessie Hamner was born in Alabama. She separated from her husband and eventually moved to Akron and became the head cook at the county jail there. Later, she ran a boarding house. She died in 1962. She was born in 1759. Her siblings and her education are unknown. Her husband, John Preston Clements, lived in Alabama and was probably born there. He was the owner of 2 general stores. After separation from his wife, he stayed in Alabama. His siblings and education are unknown. Thank you for your attention. I hope you have enjoyed my report about my family history.